Hello, today I'll be doing an overview on the technique of vibrato. So, vibrato, in many ways, is an ornamentation on a note. There's a lot of ways you can play vibrato. Let me rephrase that. There's a lot of shades of vibrato, meaning oscillation types. Now, the word oscillation just means how fast you're doing something. For instance, I can do a vibrato very wide, that's very small or very wide oscillations, but I can also do a vibrato going very fast oscillations. So, vibrato very much is an ornament of controlled oscillations. So the question is, how do we do vibrato? So in my opinion, vibrato shares many characteristics with the idea of shifting. Shifting is moving from position to position. And it's how we shift is we have to open up the forearm here, and this point right here where our elbow, we have to fill this kind of opening here. Should never be wrist. That's too small of a joint and action to get a true shift. I see a lot of young players try to shift like this, and it creates a lot of tension. Two, they usually get stuck. So when we're shifting, we have to fill this openness to not only get a nice lyrical and clean shift, but also to allow a clarity in our shift. That same concept applies to vibrato. Vibrato very much is the opening and closing of our forearm. Again, you'll see some people want to do this, or it's hard for me to do it, but want to do like this. This isn't very friendly of a vibrato for cellists. Violinists, they have something called fingered vibrato, which is more of a wrist vibrato, and then they have a forearm vibrato. Us as cellists, we don't have that. We don't have that luxury of this. It causes tension for us, the way we are in a setup wise. So the point is, how do we practice this vibrato? Well, first, I think we have to get comfortable with shifting. If we're not comfortable shifting, I can guarantee you your vibrato is tight. Even if you are comfortable with shifting, if you're not thinking about this mechanics still, a vibrato is probably tight, or it's a very singular vibrato. I know sometimes if you have a tight vibrato, you're trying to vibrate through tension. I've had a teacher describe it as a opera singer who needs to retire. Very much where it's uncontrolled or very kind of too narrow, like that. Where it's the oscillations being held is, if I were to hold my hand and try to squeeze, that is exactly what's going on, because you're squeezing. This is just the natural occurrence that happens with my hand trying to squeeze. There's only one kind of speed I have with that kind of tension. Now, if I can relax and working on the opening, then I can have a very much controlled. If I wanted that speed, I can get it with control, not just one. I can also have many different shades of it. Now, going to the point of how do we practice that? I would recommend much metronome work, but practicing shifting first. One exercise I do with my students is I have them kind of go through a gauntlet of things, but we start with kind of playing our first finger on the E in first position on the D string, and then shift to the A on the D string. Now I have them do that like this. So I repeat the top, up bow, and then I do it with the next finger, F natural. We're going to go up by half steps. F sharp. G. case I wasn't clear, every time I went to that half step note, I was using a different finger. The F natural on 2, F sharp on 3, G on 4, and I would continue going to the A. Now, that's very preliminary of that. Of course, I would say this would be your week 1 kind of a practice, or maybe day 1 of that practice of vibrato. The next step on the day 1 practice is to add a different rhythm. And so forth. And kind of going down this pyramid of rhythms. That's a triplet. You can go down all the way to 16th note and then 32nd notes. And kind of use all these sorts of different rhythms with that same kind of note pattern to kind of just develop different control of your arm. Because vibrato, again, is a controlled oscillation of pitch. And so the more control we have, the more colors and clarity and freedom we can have in music. I would say the next step after you've gotten comfortable with just this pattern would be to add this kind of exercise where we're going with a different ending shift notes. Instead of going to the A now, I'm going to G sharp with my 1 still. And G natural. F sharp. F natural. And again, go through all those rhythms again. And after you do the rhythms, you do the next finger, then the next finger, then the next finger. And keep kind of building that kind of pyramid and hierarchy gauntlet of these vibrato exercises. Now, once you've mastered these kind of shifting exercises, you can now do this kind of fun exercise, which I like doing, is this. It's going up by half step, back and forth. And then kind of going different rhythm. And again, I'm focusing entirely on the opening and closing of my forearm. I'm not doing this. I'm doing this. These are 8th notes. This one's a little trickier, the triplet. And again, I'm only going up a half step from E to F natural. Now ideally you would want to, I was cheating a little bit, but you would want to go in beats of 4. 2, 3, 4, next part 1, 2, 3, 4. And already that 32nd note almost sounds like a vibrato, very wide vibrato, but it almost sounds like it. Now after you kind of go through that gauntlet of notes, or gauntlet on the E to F, go to the next one. 2, second finger, F natural to F sharp. Do it all again, and then 3, F sharp to G, 4, G to G sharp. Yeah, and then that's how you pretty much start developing that idea in this kind of week 1 of vibrato. I would say doing that every day kind of going down that gauntlet of exercises, it's going to take you probably an hour, hour and a half, if you really take it seriously and go. If you kind of just kind of do the overview of that exercise, refer back to the sheet to kind of see all the rhythms and patterns that I've attached to this video. Then you still spend at least some time thinking about this opening and closing with those different patterns, because this will definitely help develop that. Now, kind of the hard part is kind of how do we transfer this to actual music? That's the hard part. I would say is whatever tempo you choose for your pieces. Like for instance, if you were to play Bach's Prayer, you have to pick how fast you want each of those notes. The little notes, these little notes are definitely going to have a much narrower, faster is not a word, faster vibrato, and then the longer notes will have a more in a wider, not necessarily slower, but a slower oscillation. The different rhythms. And so when you find a tempo for that, let's say if you keep it at the 60 click, I want to find how fast do I want those triplet 16th notes. And so I kind of go down different rhythms and see what rhythm do I want in these. So these are 30-second notes. Is that what I want? I like that. So I chose 30-second note oscillations for my little notes. Now what do I want for my longer notes? This is where it gets a little complicated and maybe putting too much thought into it. But I think having these ideas can definitely help shape control over your music. So now I'm going to choose triplet 16th notes to see if I like the longer notes with these oscillation rhythms. Maybe a little too slow. Or not. I like that. Maybe if I add a slightly faster rhythm, a 7-tuplet. That's also, to me, in my ear, a very acceptable rhythm. A 7-tuplet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, that's just me being a little crazy, but it kind of gives you the idea. One really good resource that I use to kind of help find these rhythms, of course, is I use an app called Tonal Energy. I don't know how well you'll see it on the camera, but the reason why I love it so much is my cello down. Kind of doing this backwards. Is it has all these different rhythms. Oh, it's all backwards. All these different rhythms you can kind of go through and pick and see how fast you want those notes to have vibrated. Now I picked the 7-tuplet. It's pardon that is backwards. And here's the triplet 16th notes and the 30-second notes, 64th notes. So all these different rhythms you can kind of experiment with and with the oscillation amounts for your pieces. So that's how I would say you would transfer the work that you put in with the worksheets and your vibrato exercises to your actual music and repertoire. And of course, you want to pick what's pleasing to the ear, but you also want to think about even further on is what's the general idea of each era of music. Because, romantic music, you can have lush, thick vibrato. But in Baroque music, vibrato is very much kind of like the sweet treat that you get as a reward. It's not something you want to use exclusively in pieces. And it's definitely not narrow. It's ornamented. It's better to control it as well. But it's not on every note. And of course, classical era is going to be a little more narrow. not so much there, and it's again building on from the Baroque era of ornamentation on notes, and then when we get to the Romantic era and beyond, a lot more freedom and lushness depending on the piece, composers. It's so many different things, and I encourage you as young artists and musicians to research what composers you're playing, what eras they're from, and kind of what inspires them and where do they draw a lot of their ideas. Like Piazzolla, the king of the tangos, very much loved Bach and studied Bach profusely, and one of his great teachers was Nadia Boulanger, that French influence, and to a lot of the Americas kind of inspired his type of music, but it's not strictly the tango of South America. It has a lot of inspiration with Bach, so that kind of can influence some of your ideas and your vibrato and textures and shit, but that's a whole nother can of worms. So hopefully that gives you a brief overview on vibratos and kind of gives you some idea how to work with the vibrato worksheet that I've sent you guys, and can help get you on the right track. And of course, this hopefully serves as a guide of when you get lost in practice between lessons to see if you're doing the right thing. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, shoot me a text, or send me an email, or just ask me next lesson. Thank you guys. See you.